What is going on, Movie Meals? Movie Meals, episode 1, baby. Here we are, episode 1 of the podcast. You have
Let's
to have a podcast
go.
at some point. We're a couple of white guys. It's just what you do. Um, so we're here to just talk about whatever's kind of in the news before we get into it. Remember, this is Patreon exclusive. Go check everything out on the actual channel on YouTube under Movie Meals. We're on TikTok. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Give me all those thoughts. Join the Patreon. It's just $1 to be a part of this. That's a great deal. Thank you to Kimberly, Karen, who are on the Patreon for some shout outs. You guys are awesome. So yeah, Kyle, you excited about a podcast, huh? This could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, depends on and how the convo's going. But you're excited here.
I am excited. Lately, what I've enjoyed about our videos is that they don't just feel like reviews to me. I mean, obviously, that's why we like doing this, is because we like talking about movies and we like breaking down, kind of analyzing to a degree about what we liked and what we disliked about movies that we see coming out. But at the same time, it also tends to sometimes talk industry related stuff, or at least talk about the grand scale of film in general, whether it's the film Twitter crowd or the general audience crowd, that sort of thing. And I kind of hope with this podcast we can dive into that stuff a bit more, because I think it could add
I
more
agree.
context for our community about the type of film lovers we are, what we think about the industry, and maybe make the reviews even more fun as a result.
Yeah. So the first thing when we were talking about what we want to talk about that I want to talk about, because you got to start big, baby. You got to start with guys like this right
Yeah.
here with Yoda. We're going to talk about Star Wars. There's a lot of news. I want to give a shout out to George Lucas. Happy birthday. He just had a birthday a few days ago. Just the creator of all creators. Um,
Happy
so
birthday.
the first thing I actually want to talk about more than anything about this is so Vanity Fair does this huge thing, right? They do this huge promotional thing. The photos looked awesome. I mean, awesome. Seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi next to to Mandalorian. Come on now with Ahsoka. It was cool to see. The photos alone were very, very cool. Especially with
Photoshop is a heck of a tool.
well, they always that's what they do.
I
But
know.
Vanity Fair does get a lot of credit because they know what they're doing. They tend to have the best of these kind of like photo dump stuff.
Yeah,
But they
yeah.
did a bunch of interviews. They did a bunch of interviews. Like Hayden and Ian McGregor have been interviewing and talking about how excited they are for the show, which is out this Friday, which I can't freaking wait for. Um,
Is it this Friday?
it's this Friday, the 27th. Yep, 2
I
episodes and Stranger
Jeez,
Things. Whew.
I wait, Stranger Things 2?
Stranger Things and Obi-Wan Kenobi are dropping on the exact same day. Yep.
I actually had no idea.
Apparently, Stranger Things, side note here, Stranger Things' final episode is 2 hours and 30 minutes. It is a length of a movie, so they only have like 4 episodes or something, and they're all going to be super long. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Huh, okay.
Uh, but
Interesting.
anyway,
Okay, whatever.
so one of the things I definitely want to touch on here, because I think it's a good thing to start off with. Kathy Kennedy they're all doing interviews. Kathy Kennedy in an interview says we learned a lot from Solo. That we she said something, you know what, I want to find the full quote, but she basically said we're not going to recast legacy characters. And that Solo was a lesson for that. And I'm real curious. Well, I'm going to look for that quote, but what did you think when you first saw all that? Because I know I texted it to you.
It made me laugh because that's a weird lesson to have. Because one, it's not like you're really recasting legacy characters very often in the first place. Like Solo was really the only one, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So what what lesson with the only time that you've done that could you possibly get out of it? But two, she's referring to the fact that Solo was like one of the lower grossing Star Wars movies ever, and I don't think it was because of casting. If anything, the castings were very good. Like, I mean, Childish Gambino as Lando was great, of course, but Alden did what he could with Solo. I felt like I enjoyed him in the role. It's a really hard role to recapture because it's kind of one of those roles where only one person could have ever done it, and Alden did the best he could. So Yeah, it just was weird to me that that was the takeaway because that wasn't the issue. At least I definitely didn't think it was the issue.
Yeah. So I found a bunch of quotes by her. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few of them. So she said that Solo was one of the first ideas they came up with when the company was sold. And at the time, she genuinely believed it was a good idea. All this comes from the Hollywood Reporter. Love the Hollywood Reporter.
Mm,
She said originally some people have talked about how well maybe Solo could have been as a TV show, but even doing Solo as a TV show without Harrison Ford as Han Solo, it's the same thinking and issues. Maybe I should have recognized this before. We would never make Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. Having to finish the fifth movie, I can tell you there wasn't a day I wasn't on set where I wasn't like, yes, this is Indiana Jones. Um, Let's see. Kennedy went on to say the studio has now taken this approach with all of its classic Star Wars characters. She said, we also can't do something with Luke Skywalker that isn't Mark Hamill. She noted in another point in the interview, we're going to suddenly go try to do that. Just staying within the construction of George's storytelling to keep chipping away at that, I think it would be wrong. It's our job to step away now, but still have the connection to the mythology that George created. That won't stop. But we are moving on from the Skywalker saga. That's what's taking a lot of time, discussion, and thought right now. How they move away from the Skywalker saga is what they're focused on. Um,
which I think
but
that makes sense. I think
I
most Star Wars
completely
fans agree with
agree.
that too. Yeah, I think most Star
Well,
Wars fans are in that boat.
when you make a movie like Rise of Skywalker, I just it's so bad. I just oh my gosh. Um really though, so for me, like it makes sense to move off of Skywalker. I really like Kathleen Kennedy. It's funny because we're doing the white guy thing. We're making a podcast, we're talking about nerd stuff. I complain about so many influencers that I see in the movie sphere and in the nerd world, talking about Star Wars and Marvel especially, who talk about all these things, and they either get their facts wrong or they follow clickbait headlines and things like that. Like I see creators be like, Kathy Kennedy is one of the greatest producers of all time, but then they don't name any movies she's done. She is one of the best producers ever. She has made some of the biggest movies ever: Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, Jaws. I mean, like literally Indiana Jones, Star Wars, the prequels. Like she is responsible for helping and getting a lot of those made. And we're with this legacy thing. Look, Alden and Lando and Donald Glover were awesome. I mean, they're giving Lando his own spin-off show. So clearly the recasting isn't an issue. You know
Is
what I
that
mean?
still
Like it's not an
happening?
issue. It wasn't mentioned in this thing, but I
Yeah,
remember reading a while ago that it was still happening when he was done making the Mr. and Mrs. Smith show.
I mm,
Let's look
I'll
it
believe
up.
when I see it.
This is
I'll
why we're
believe
on a
when I see it.
podcast now.
Yeah, because I just don't. I don't know. I think just between what Kennedy said about not recasting those legacy characters and just with some interviews I've been seeing with Donald Glover, it doesn't really seem like he wants to. It seems like he wants to do his own thing, like his own thing artistically, and not do something like a solo. I mean, I don't know.
So
Maybe money talks, obviously, but
So this was Donald Glover was asked on March 30th of this year, so just a couple months ago,
okay.
on Jimmy Kimmel. This comes from StarWarsNews.net, and they are awesome. Everything they put out on Star Wars is always credible. They are the best Star Wars site you can find.
Oh, okay.
Um, he laughed and said, "Am I? No, yeah, And he said, "I have a lot of things. I like to blossom and then go away, and right now it's definitely the start of one of those." I have like a ton of stuff I've been working on, but I just wanted it all to come out at the same time. I feel like that's what's important to me. So he didn't say no, but it sounds like it's on the back burner. And that might be a him thing. It might be a Kathy thing. Um, but I think you can go either way with that. I mean, Kathy also said that the Ryan Johnson trilogy is still technically greenlit and happening, but he is going to focus on his Netflix show first, and then they will come together and um, you know meet about
Hmm.
him later, is what she's saying. So look, they're not the problem with Solo. They weren't the problem with Solo. Solo was
No.
just an okay written movie. I mean, it's fine. It's a good movie. I have fun with it. I think it's fun. I think Alden's fun. I think some of the stuff Ron Howard did was really good. Um, but it's they're not the problem. It's the story. It's the writing. It's not his portrayal. Even Harrison Ford, I retweeted a clip. Go check out my Twitter. I retweeted a clip of Harrison Ford kind of jokingly interrupting an interview with Alden for press for the movie, and Harrison said he was blown away by how great he thought Alden was doing and how much he loved how he was taking over the character. And everybody jumped on Mark Hamill's side in interviews before they saw The Last Jedi when Mark was like, I didn't really like the way my character was taken. And everybody was like, see, you have to listen to actors. You have to listen to actors. And now it's like, no, you have to listen to script writers. They know, like, it just makes no sense. I'm just rambling now. Thoughts? Bring some context to this podcast, Kyle.
All right. Then let's think about the context of Star Wars at around that time. Wasn't Solo coming out after The Last Jedi, which was what, in
Yes.
December? And Solo
Yes.
came out in May.
Yes.
So Star
Mistakes.
Wars was in a fickle situation, we'll call it,
Yeah, it was
after
not
The
in a
Last
good light.
Jedi. After The Last Jedi happened. So 5 months later, when it's still a fickle situation, and this Solo movie
Yeah.
comes out where people are like, you recasted Han
Let's
Solo?
let's
Why
not
do we need
forget.
to know about Han Solo?
Let's not forget though, Kyle.
Okay.
5 months from The Last Jedi, and it was like 3 weeks after Endgame. Or it was Infinity War. It was one
Yes,
of those
yes, it
two.
was.
It was
Yes,
right.
that's
It
right.
was
Let me double
right
check that.
after a massive Marvel property because Bob Iger even said we wanted to see if Star Wars, and Bob Iger was the CEO of all Marvel, and the stockholders wanted to, or Marvel of all Disney, and he said the stockholders, we wanted to try this, test this out to see if we could move Star Wars to summer. And we shouldn't have. And I truly believe they should not have. I think if they would have probably almost doubled their money and made closer to $800 million to $1 billion if they had just released it over Christmas. A year later, but but episode 9 didn't even come out a year later, didn't it? Didn't it come out 2 Christmases later? He's on the move. He's typing. Can Al find it before him?
Rise of Skywalker came out Christmas of 2019. Solo came out summer of 2018. I believe that was May. And then Avengers Endgame was in 2019, and then Infinity War was in 2018.
So when was
Jeez,
Solo,
that was
you
a while
said?
ago. Solo was in May of 2018.
And then when was Infinity War or Endgame?
Well, Infinity War was a month before that in 2018, and then Endgame was in 2019, a year later.
Okay, so then when was Rise of Skywalker? Did you
Christmas of
say?
2019.
So we went Solo, we went a Christmas with no Star Wars, and then we got a Christmas with Star Wars. That's your
Yep.
mistake. That's your mistake. The best thing Kathy Kennedy's ever done is control when Star Wars comes out and put it on Christmas. Make Christmas and Star Wars synonymous with each other, and you were going to make more money. I mean, maybe I'm just being crazy here. Do you think the movie alone, Solo's a fun movie. It's fine. It's not that horrible. It's not that great. There's bad things. There's fun things. There's okay things. Goofy villain. But do you think that if the same movie comes out just Christmas 2018, they make more money? Do you agree to that statement? Do you think that would help?
Yes, but not by a wide margin. Because I still think there would have been angry conversations about Star Wars in general. It took a long time for everyone
Probably.
to calm down about Star Wars, to my memory anyway. And I think it also would have given Ron Howard more time to be making the movie because it was like the
Mm-hmm.
middle of production,
They pushed
which
it
is probably
hard.
like a year before Solo came out, if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah.
That Chris
No, you're right.
or Lord and Miller, who made like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball, 21 Jump Street movies,
We're
they
supposed to do it.
were supposed to make this movie, and then they got pulled because Kathleen Kennedy, and it's kind of is a pattern of hers when it comes to Star Wars, they weren't making the movie that she thought that they agreed on, but she probably did agree on it because she greenlit it to begin with. And then she immediately went to, the safe choice, which is Ron Howard, and he's still a good director, but even still,
Great
every good
director.
director is going to have a hard yeah, you're right, he is a great director, but he is even he would have a, difficult time making the best movie possible under the circumstances, is with the deadline and with the changing of the tides with
Dude,
creative changes.
I'm
So
looking at
it
I'm
still
looking
would
at
have.
December I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I'm looking at
No, that's
December
fine.
2018. It would have gone up against Aquaman and Bumblebee if it came out on the
Oh
21st.
wait,
There was
yeah.
a week where nothing came out except that, and I guess Mary Poppins Return came out that weekend as well. And then Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse came out 2 weeks before those, but there was a week that nothing came out. I'm telling you, Aquaman wasn't received well. Bumblebee was, but didn't not enough people went and saw it. If you stick Solo in there, people go and they're like, "Oh, would I rather see Aquaman or would I rather see this Han Solo adventure over Christmas?" Dad's taking all the kids. It would have made more money. I know it would have made more money. I bet you it would have made double. And maybe I'm
Aquaman.
just
It's weird
Aquaman
though.
was bad.
Aquaman. I mean, it wasn't received well, but it made $1 billion anyway. Like it still
I
did.
guess it
But
did. But
one of those
that's
movies would
what
have been
people
pushed
do at
back.
Christmas though. That's what people does do at Christmas though. They want to go to the movies, they go out with family, it's the time to spend. You don't want to do that, especially right after seeing something else. Ugh.
Not all of those movies would have stayed if Solo was in there. Like Bumblebee would have probably moved. Honestly, Spider Verse might have could have moved away from that release date, and the box office definitely would have looked much different for
So
all of those
this,
movies.
I'm looking up something just because I'm curious. Hollywood Reporter is stating, this was a while ago. This came from 2018. Says that Solo lost $50 million. That's how much that it lost to Disney in terms of money loss.
Okay.
Oh, I guess this might have been. It might potentially come in at 80 million. So this might have been too soon. Here, this came out a year later. Let's see. This is Deadline. This might be a little more accurate since the numbers were fully in. Wrinkle in Time, Robin Hood, Star Wars Story. It lost $76.9 million. $76.9 million. Look, I'm telling you right now, Kevin Feige walked over and said, "I'll write you a personal check for 80 million. Like, so, move on. Let me produce a Star Wars movie." Um, Yeah, I think so. The legacy thing's not an issue. And some people on Twitter I've seen have been like, "Look, I would take a fun, young, new casting to breathe life into these characters over a CGI mess any day of the week." And they were talking about Luke in Mando at the end of season 2, where I remember thinking like, "I don't know if I love the CGI. I mean, it looks great, but it's noticeable." A lot of people are like, "No, it just looks great." But I think since then, a year later um
Boba.
for Boba Fett, you're right. I was confused. For Boba Fett, it got so much better, the technology, and it did look really good. But I mean, I'm happy for Mark Hamill that he gets to continue playing these characters. But I think this idea of breathing life into new characters is smart. I mean, eventually, does Star Wars not become James Bond? Is it not, let's go on different adventures where different actors take up the mantle of Luke Skywalker and take you on a new adventure? Does that not happen at some point in our history, do you think?
Oh, I mean, I see. Well, I mean, that was close to.
He was confused.
I was confused. I don't know. I mean, I don't want it to, but I think it was almost close to happening. Although, I don't know. What I think I would kind of rather have a real actor play these iconic roles and see a full CGI embodiment for longer than 5 minutes doing it, you know? Like at some
Yeah.
point the uncanny valleyness of it all becomes unsettling. Like it's fine in Mandalorian and Boba Fett to do it for the bits,
But
to
when
do it
it's
for the
for
5 minutes. But
yeah,
for an
but
entire show, an entire movie, I don't want us to get in that territory. And I'm honestly more afraid of that than I am of a recasting of iconic character. Not that I think they should recast. I do think that they should move on and do other characters, other stories. It's okay for Star Wars to not be about Skywalkers, but
I agree.
I would rather they do that than go full uncanny valley and kind of be upset, kind of be an unsettling situation after a while.
I agree with you. I look, if they cast Sebastian Stan at as Luke Skywalker, which is the fan casting everybody wanted. If they do that, let's just say they do that. We know Sebastian Stan's a great actor. I mean, not only from what he's done in the MCU, but I Tanya, just on the Pam and Tommy show. I mean, he's great. Let's say they
Mhm.
cast him, and he looks awesome. And let's say the movie is amazing. Let's just say it's amazing. I think if that happens, the narrative
Set the bar
is
real low.
well, I think you have to because we've seen what happens if the movie's meh. If the movie's meh, we get these conversations because Alden did a
Sure.
great job. But if the movie's amazing and it's overwhelmingly loved and praised, and they're like, this is Star Wars at its best, this is incredible, you know,
Mhm.
then I think people go, the movie's awesome. I kind of, the narrative switches to, I don't know if Sebastian did a great job. He's not my Luke Skywalker. And that's the narrative that James Bond has. People say, oh, no, it's not my James Bond. I may like Daniel Craig, but my James Bond was Sean Connery. They say that, but they still like the new movies, and I think that is what would have happened. I would love to see Alden come back as Han Solo. And I think he would be great. He did a great job. I would love to see Lando again with Donald Glover. I think he did an amazing job. I liked all the movies they made. I mean, there's a big petition to make Solo 2 happen. I mean, that's been a thing for a long time
Oh,
since the
it's
movie
still
came
going
out.
on. Oh,
Every now and then it'll trend. I thought you were on movie Twitter. Are we on different movie Twitters? I'm just on
I think
Star
we
Wars
are.
Twitter.
I think we are on very different Twitters.
I'm just on Star Wars Twitter.
You guys will never see me on Twitter, by the way. Anyway,
Oh my gosh.
you can probably find
Um,
me.
but yeah, I think maybe Kathy misspoke. I think the idea of not doing Skywalkers is a good idea. We need to take a break. We needed to take a break for a while. I mean, The Rise of Skywalker was horrible. It is a horrible movie. I I get that kids will love it. I get kids love it like the prequels will be loved today. That's something that does warm my heart. Have you seen those interviews with Hayden and Ian McGregor talking about the prequels?
um, yeah, something about them like kind of being more in welcoming arms than before, right?
He talked about
Yeah.
how when they came out, he was like, I didn't want to be associated with it. I hated Star Wars. I hated doing it. It was because I was hated by everybody. And he's like, now those kids grew up and now they really appreciate it. But here's the difference. I we all still say, even those adults, they appreciate the campiness. They appreciate that those movies were the gateway to get into Star Wars. I don't know if Rise of Skywalker, because I think episode 7 and 8 are good movies, but I don't think episode 9 will be the gateway for people. I think it is truly an outlier in I just don't see anybody, first of all, starting their first Star Wars experience with episode 9 and then being like, I need to know more about this. I started with episode 1 kind of by coincidence. I think I just people will start with The Force Awakens, and that's fair, but no one's going to start with Rise of Skywalker. Just stinks. That's all I'm trying to say on this episode. On the first episode, we had to make it clear that Rise of Skywalker is a horrible movie. It's the worst Star Wars movie. It is worse than A Phantom Menace, and it is worse than Attack of the Clones. I truly believe that.
I mean, I don't disagree that that's not going to be the entryway, number 9, but that's also kind of like saying episode 2 is not the entryway for Star Wars. Like, you don't hear
No,
Star Wars
I think
fans
episode
going,
2 can be for some people because I think if you're at the right age at that time, you see episode 2 in the
hmm.
theater or something. I guess episode 9 could have that same effect,
I
but
mean, I know someone
episode 9
who
just sucks.
showed her kids Star Wars for the first time, but she started with Return of the Jedi. It whatever
Is that her
works.
favorite?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. It's like, okay.
It does,
That's a
but
weird one to
even
start off.
still, exactly though. You're still like, okay, it's your favorite, but like Return of the Jedi, really? That's what. But you never know. You never know.
I guess you're right. I don't know. It sucks. It's the worst of all of them.
I don't.
Okay,
I mean,
anyway,
it's bad. It's bad for
it's
sure.
nice
But
to see that they're doing that. Taking a break from the Skywalker saga is smart. Um, there was a rumor that what was it? One of the Acolyte show. They talked about where that's going to take place, and the show Acolyte is going to be 100 years before the events of Episode 1, which will be pretty cool because some of the books are coming out now, right about that time, and it's really cool. A lot of Jedi going on missions, just doing cool stuff, and that's exciting.
Hmm.
Do you, before we move off Star Wars and we move on to the next topic here, do you think they should go back to movies? Because it seems like the shows are what is the main focus. That even though Kevin Feige and Taika Waititi are doing a Star Wars movie together, that it doesn't, and Michael Waldron is doing a Star Wars movie. Or no, they're doing two separate ones. Kevin Feige and Michael Waldron are doing a Star Wars movie, and then Taika Waititi is doing a Star Wars movie. Two separate. They're not all produced and connected together. Do
And
you
Rogue
think?
Squadron
Yeah, what
might
happened with
happen.
that? Do you remember? Because Patty's not doing it anymore, and then they put it on the back burner, right? Why did Patty bail again? I don't remember.
Creative differences,
Oh
which is,
no, that scares you.
I mean, it's the magic lingo word that explains everything that falls flat in the film industry. But it's also a pattern when it comes to Kathleen Kennedy running Star Wars. So I don't know.
I
I
saw.
also didn't. I also didn't really care about the Rogue Squadron movie anyway. Like the fighter pilots of Star Wars don't really interest me to begin with. But I'm sure it would have
She
been a
would have made it.
cool. I mean, she would have made a cool looking movie, that's for sure. But I'm just saying, like when it was first announced, I wasn't particularly excited about it. I was like, hey, as long as we get away from Skywalker and J.J. Abrams, like it's fine. Like
Look, they need to take the book Lost Stars and turn it into a two-part movie. They need
I
to.
have
Lost
always said
Stars.
that too.
Lost Stars, Kyle. It's about a girl and a boy who were like childhood friends on this planet, and they grow up loving the Empire because the propaganda, things like that. They both apply to be in the Empire. They become fighter pilots, and he breaks away and joins the rebellion. He has a run-in with his name was just in my head, iconic character, and I can't think of his name. This is what happens when the lights are on.
Boba Fett,
Um, no,
Luke,
no.
Leia.
It's Ian McGregor's cousin who played him in the original trilogy. Why can't I think of his
I,
freaking name?
I have no idea.
Oh man, I hope nobody
His
watches
cousin played
episode
him.
1 because this is gonna destroy me. And he showed up in uh why can't I think of his freaking name? It's gonna drive me up a wall.
I don't know, but I'm enjoying this. Come on, buddy, you got this.
Um
Any descriptor? What does he look like? Was it a Jedi? What?
no, I'm gonna
Freddie
find
Prince
it.
Jr. Was it him?
No. um
I'm not making
Why
matters
can't I
better.
think of his name? It's about to I'm about to lose it. Entertain people right now while I'm figuring it out.
How the heck do I go off of this? I mean, what you're describing so far, anyway, sounds interesting. Yeah, I don't know, like stuff like that was fine, and I guess it would also be fine if that was also in the TV format. Um, just because I'm not sure how much that could entice all of the audiences to go out to the movie theater to see it, which is also kind of part of the problem as well. Like the theater, we're just not sure, like quite yet, what really works.
Wedge Antilles. I couldn't freaking think of it.
Of
He
course,
he runs into Wedge. He meets and Captain Antilles, and he talks. They have like a conversation and like a big heart to heart where he starts to question. They work on the Death Star, the first Death Star, and they had this boy and this girl, and they're starting to build a romance with each other. They're like probably like 18 or 19 or something at the time of this, and he leaves. He deserts the Empire and joins the rebellion, and they meet a couple times through the events and everything, and it's really good. It's one of the best Star Wars books they've written, and that would be such a great, give us a love story. We would get fighter pilots, we would get all that stuff. That's the type of stuff I want. But what were you saying? I didn't hear a word you were starting to say. What were you saying?
that sounds about right. No,
Wedge Antilles. He gets me every time.
well, I was just saying that I just am not sure if that would be like a great seller for like general audiences for theater, the theater landscape, and it's kind of just me saying like for audiences maybe they would like those types of stories on the television format. As much as I'd love to see them in theaters more, I'm just thinking in the grand scope of things, like what would really work best for audiences right now.
I think if you're gonna do that show, I think the idea of following fighter pilots works in Star Wars, but I think if you put it around the Skywalker saga, that's the bad call. I think if you do 100 years before and it's just a new character and he just happens to be a fighter pilot in the whatever army at the time is battling, I think that is a good story. I mean, you could do during the Empire, but then you have to have run ins with somebody at some point, some character, whether they're big or not. There'll be somebody that would make sense. And I think that's what we want to avoid. And I wonder if that was the difference. Maybe she wanted to make it about Wedge Antilles. Maybe that's exactly what she wanted. Is she wanted to pick a side character that we knew a little bit about, loved, and she wanted to explore it. And maybe Kathy was like, no, not after Alden. I'm not doing that with any character. No, you can't do it. Maybe that was the creative differences. Who knows?
Who would have thought it would have been because of Wedge? Not me.
I'm rewatching Game of Thrones right now. I don't know why. I know you're not a Game
I
of
don't know
Thrones
why.
guy, but
No,
I was
it's really relaxing,
just
by the way.
thinking and talking about it a little bit lately about how Dan and Dave were supposed to do a Star Wars trilogy. And
Oh
just
yeah.
watching some of the things they do in Game of Thrones and thinking how great their Star Wars trilogy would have really been. Especially if they were going to do Knights of the Old Republic, which is what everybody thought they were going to do. That would have been sick. It would have been cool. And it's a bummer that episode 8 was so bad that Kathy is just too reactionary. And she said, nope, I don't want you to do it. Your
Sorry,
last season was bad.
episode 8 or 9.
9, sorry. No, sorry. I mean season 8 of Game of Thrones. When season
Oh,
8 of Game of Thrones came
gotcha.
out, I man, how do you studios? What do you think about the reactionary thing? Because DC got it for a long time, being too reactionary. Even the Dark Universe got hit with being too reactionary. They made one bad movie, and everybody's like, "This is stupid," and they just canceled all those plans.
Well, it
What do
probably
you
was going to be
think?
stupid.
I know, but I'm just giving examples here. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
Solo, now all this response. What do you think about producers being reactionary compared to, because the narrative is like, Solo would have been awesome if they just kept Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Like Ant-Man would have been way better if they had just kept what's
Edgar
his
Wright.
face? Edgar Wright, where again, Edgar Wright said, I don't want to make an MCU movie. And they said, we now want you to make an MCU movie. Okay, then I'm going to go do something else. Okay, I'm going to go. That sounds good. Like that was all mutual. It wasn't bad. It was all fine. I saw some TikTokers talk about that the other day and it annoyed me because they were like, this movie would have been amazing. And it's like, probably. But we wanted an MCU movie at that time. Everybody would have been so mad if they had gotten an Ant-Man movie from Edgar Wright that didn't connect at that time with everything else
Yep,
that came out. They would have lost it. But what do you
yep.
think about the connectivity?
You mean what do I think about the reactionary
Yes,
aspect
that's what
behind
I
the
mean. That's what
industry?
I mean. That's what I mean.
Um, it's a roll of the dice, man. I mean, making movies, no matter
Art.
what talent you have behind them, no matter what who the higher ups are at the time in a studio setting, it's all a roll of the dice. Like you could either make the best movie ever, or you're gonna make the crappiest movie ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's with every kind of movie, whether it's indie,
Ah,
whether it's an MCU level movie, it's all the luck of the draw. But I will say it helps to have a plan. No matter
mm-hmm.
what type of movie you have, everyone needs to be on that plan, and that's why the MCU, Marvel Studios, has become the juggernaut that it is in the industry because, people keep believing in the plan. I mean, they had to first earn it, but with earning it came rewards, and now look at where they are now. Meanwhile, all of these other studios have become reactionary to other products. It's a result of not having a clear vision, but it's also a result of listening a bit too much into fans as well. I don't think fans are the end all be all when it comes to this. Yes, we're knowledgeable, but we also don't know how to make movies either. We're
I
knowledgeable
do.
within the comic,
I like
within
to
like
think.
comics or within our fan base of whatever it could be. But yes, except for Alex, because Alex knows everything. But
I went to film school, sir. I know how to make a movie.
yeah, that's true. That's true. You went to film school. All right, fair enough. But that's just all I mean. Like making movies is the luck of the draw to begin with, but you also just need to set up a plan no matter what type of movie or series of movies or television that you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it from there, then we see the end results happening from the likes of, the newest Star Wars trilogy and the spin-offs that they tried to do. And same with the DCU for a while, with kind of having a plan, but then, the luck of the draw happened to where the movies weren't that good, and then they listened too much to the fans, and then it just became even more of a convoluted mess. So
Let's
that's all
talk
I'm
about
trying to
this
say.
plan thing because you're right. Because you look at the Dark Universe that I brought up, they had a plan.
Mhm.
They knew who was going to play what. They got their cast together. They said we're going to combine these. We're going to make a universe like Marvel, and we have a plan. And it didn't work out. And then you look at DC had a plan, didn't work out. Marvel, what they did is they had a producer in Kevin Feige who said, "Hey, let me put a little scene at the end of this movie." And maybe we'll have them connect because I think making an Avengers movie would be pretty cool. And if these movies are good enough, we might be able to do this. And I think they would have at least tried to get through the first Avengers. And if that had not been successful, they would have probably stopped. But it continued. And what Kevin Feige does so well is he puts everything on the table and he goes, okay, we're going to start with this one. And we need to get a great filmmaker to make this movie, this Iron Man movie. Let's go get Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau's done a great job. He, at the time, I guess, was a little more underground, but he had made some really good movies up until then. And they take a risk, and then for Guardians of the Galaxy, they get James Gunn and they get Peyton Reed and they get all these different people who know genres and know storytelling, but they're always willing to move things around. And with such a brain trust who understands Marvel, such a fan of the comics, he's able to really handle it. And that's the biggest problem I think Kathy faces, and I think DC has faced, where they don't have somebody who's an actual nerd at the head of it, who like maybe they've read some comics, but are they really, like, I feel like I could sit down and talk to Kevin Feige just about Old Man Logan for 5 hours straight and not get tired of it, just talking about the nuances of just the comic book. Like, I could just talk to him about that. And I the, other places don't have that. They just don't have that. They try to do it, but nobody, you can't replicate the MCU. And the best thing Star Wars has done is bringing in Dave Filoni to take over that kind of creative head, and that level of a nerd, and gets what he's doing and whatnot. And maybe they're trying to do that with the shows, but I don't know. I've lost my train of thought here, where we're going with this.
It's also just impossible to find the guy who's not only a nerd of this one thing, but knows how to tell stories, or who
And good at
understands
what
the
they
business
do.
side, who knows about the entertainment industry, who knows how to talk to fans, but also knows how to talk about studio heads and businessmen, and
Yeah,
who there's for how many people work in the industry. There's just not always that type of person that is that jack of all trades that goes so far down the rabbit hole within fandomhood like that. Like,
exactly.
and to be honest, like within history, fandom really hasn't been as strong or as loud as it is today. I don't
Loud, I
think.
think, is the best word. I think loud is the right word to use there.
And I think because of that loudness, it gets these studios a little spooked, where they're trying to find their next Feige, but there's only
Yeah,
but they're
there's
just
only
not
one.
those. There's not those types of guys. Like, those industry guys aren't, like I said, that jack of all trades, where they know the nerd stuff, but also know about business, but also know about financials, but also knows how to tell stories. Like, there's not people like that very often, and it's just yeah, I just it's really hard to find it, and it just goes to show, like, they tried that during the tens with the Dark Universe with the DCU, thinking they
Hmm.
found their guy or whatever, and thinking they have their plan, but it's just hard to replicate finding that one person, and as a result replicating the success.
Yeah,
So it's a hard find. Like, whenever people say, someday they'll find their Feige, or they just got to find their own Feige. He's out there somewhere.
he's not.
No, probably not.
There's only one. Yeah,
You can find good people to help build the plan, and work with the storytellers, and but it's not going to be the same. You're not going to
that
get
is
the
a
same
huge
sort of
reason
success.
that Steven Spielberg, when George Lucas asked him to direct a Phantom Menace, he said, "This is your baby. You don't want people messing with this. Make your story. This is you. You made this massive thing that people overwhelmingly love. You should control it." And since he sold it, I think we've gotten some great stories. I think we've gotten some not so great stories. I think we've gotten some very bad stories. But um, I saw this influencer. They get me, Kyle. Talking about, he was like, "Did you guys know Steven Spielberg is one of the best producers of all time?" And then he like produces everything. And then he started like listing things he's produced. And it's like, you're clearly not in the industry. It's been a little to no, or a not so secret that Steven Spielberg will slap his name on anything. You know who else is a great producer? Brad Pitt. Plan B's on everything. 12 Years a Slave, Brad Pitt produced. Uh, World War Z, all the movies he makes, other movies, Plan B's on
Alex,
everything.
Alex, did you know Will Ferrell produces movies?
No, it's ridiculous. The
I thought
fans,
he
the
only made
fans are
people
ridiculous.
laugh.
He only makes people laugh. I only make people laugh.
It's true.
It's true.
You went to
Yeah,
film school. You learned how to make people laugh.
it's true. That's what you do when you go to film school. But I just, I hate that attitude. It's because it's clearly people who really do not understand the industry. They really don't. They don't understand the industry. I don't want a Kevin Feige. I want good stories. That's why I like Matt Reeves. Can Matt Reeves make a great Batman universe? Yes, but I don't want Matt Reeves taking over the DC cinematic universe. I want to see more Matt Reeves movies. I would rather
Yeah,
him I would rather him go do something else than take over the head of DC at Warner Brothers. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, same with Christopher Nolan. They wanted Christopher Nolan to come back, make other DC movies. He's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go make creative movies.
I mean,
Um,
Zack Snyder was almost or potentially the golden boy for. I'm
he
afraid of
wanted
saying
it
his
though.
name.
He wanted it.
He did
He
want
was
it
like,
though. He
I'm
did
gonna
want it,
make every superhero movie ever.
but even still, like if I remember right, you and I were even like, we don't know, you don't need to make them all. It's
No,
fine,
Zach, no. You haven't made too
We're
many
excited about
good
BVS.
movies
We
for
bet it's going to
doing.
be amazing, but we don't
Man, the
need you to
trailer
make
for
every.
BVS still slaps. I want to ask
It's a
you,
really good trailer.
it's not in our show notes, but Disney announced they're going to make a Daredevil
Excuse me.
show. They're going to do a reboot of the show, and that Charlie Cox was going to return, but it was not going to be the same show. It was going to be a reboot. What did you think of that?
Well, it got me to finally rewatch Daredevil. I'm in the middle of season 1 right now.
Man, I just rewatched it. It's so good.
Oh,
So
it's
good.
so good. It's so
I
good, man.
I get why they're doing a reboot.
Yeah.
Um because they want it to be a Daredevil that will fit in the MCU for the Avengers, and Kevin Feige's at the head of this, so
Yeah.
we trust it. But I think the smartest thing to do would be like, we're going to make a season 4 of Daredevil, and we're going and just say it up front, but it's going to be less violent, but it will be a season 4. So everything else that had happened, but now he's just going to be less violent. The reason we're doing it is so he'll be in our movies that are a little less violent than his, that they're PG-13, not R. If Kevin Feige just came out and said that, I think all the fans would be like, okay, sounds good. Great. It'll connect. Season 4. Sure. You're going to dumb it down a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, but then
I
I
don't
think
think you
they'll
need to call it a
forget.
reboot.
But then I think they'll forget, and when they realize it isn't as violent, then they'll freak out.
Yeah, but then that's on them. Well, then you and I will sit
Yeah.
here on our podcast that no one watches, and we'll say, "Hey, you said you were okay with it." I think that's the smartest move. At least Kevin Feige then can be like, "Look, I told you, like 8 months, like 2 years in advance before we even started filming, that we were going to do this." So it makes
Right.
sense to keep Charlie Cox if he wants to keep doing it, for him to come back. He's in No Way Home. I mean, he's got to be back, but. And
No,
maybe
he'll
it
be
will be
back.
just a soft reboot. Maybe they'll use the same suit, but they're going to do the origin again or something, and just do it that way. Or maybe he'll just have already been established, and that'll be the reboot, that there won't really be an explanation. It'll just be him in a suit, and maybe the suit will look different. Maybe it won't. And they won't tell us his backstory or anything. And they'll just be like, hey, seasons 1 through 3 are here, just go watch them. Who knows what they'll do,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I would be okay if it was the soft reboot format because I just think if you jump from season 3 to season 4 and then you try to explain like season 4 is in continuity, but it's just going to be very lighter than what the first 3 seasons are, then I'm just not going to feel it, you know, thinking of it in
sure.
those terms. And honestly, it just makes me love the show so much because it just feels full of life and just I don't know. I just
It's
love
so
what they
good.
do with that show. And then even Moon Knight, which we thought was going to be gritty, and it comes out and it's like, all right, it is what it is. But
Still
um,
pretty intense.
I just don't have. I don't know. But anyway, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that
He has two personalities
I'm not
from
very
trauma.
hyped about season or about Daredevil in the Disney Plus sphere, but I am happy that Charlie Cox gets the role back. I think fans will be happy about that too, and I'm sure it'll be a good show still. But I just really enjoy the Daredevil show so much that I'd rather it just be breaking off and doing its own thing and finally being continuity at that point, rather than try to make it all fit together for me
And maybe we're
personally.
just being unfair. Maybe he
I could
won't
be.
meet
Yeah.
with the Avengers other than that Spider-Man thing. Maybe they will just make it just as violent because we know they're doing Deadpool. Kevin Feige has said, we know we're going to do Deadpool. We know it's going to be violent still. We want to
Mhm.
do it and keep it the same way. And Kevin Feige has enough gusto now. I mean, he's made him, $8 billion that he gets what he wants. But all right, we don't have a lot of time left. Did you want to talk about this Bollywood movie you keep bugging me about?
Triple R. Yeah.
Is that what it's
Uh,
called, or is it just called RRR?
I've heard it as Triple R. You can call it RRR if you want to, but
Let
it
me look
also
at the
stands
official title.
for Rise, Roar, Revolt. And admittedly, this is like one of the first Bollywood movies I've ever seen. So I came in being very blind with it, but I just kept hearing so much hype about it through film Twitter, and I missed out on seeing it in theaters that when I finally heard that it was on Netflix, and I had to dig through Netflix, by the way, to find it, which I thought was kind of dumb.
What do
But
you mean dig through? You
um,
just search RRR.
yeah, but like when you put in a new movie, like, and you should like advertise for it, but there's like no
I don't.
advertising for
I
it.
don't go on Netflix that often.
No, Netflix is pretty crappy now,
Ooh, that
but
maybe that'll be episode 2. Be a
yeah,
good one.
but no, Triple R. What everyone's saying on film Twitter, guys, like they're accurate about it. Like it's just a blast. It both to me feels like it doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time really hones into like the dramatic stakes of the story, the human emotions that are going on. It's about like these two guys who one is trying to save his sister who was kidnapped by like the British because it takes place around like the 1920s, and another guy who's trying to get some weapons to save his small little village. And as they're both like crossing paths, they also learn to become like the best friends you could ever
You and
imagine in
me.
your life. Exactly, like times 1,000. These dudes have like great
We empathize.
chemistry. I'm telling you, man, when you watch it, like they're singing and dancing and they're
Is it a
going on
musical?
adventures together. It's a musical, it's an action movie, it's a comedy, it has romance, whatever you want, it's got in it. And I just was able to kick back and be able to enjoy myself. Like I said, it's heightened in not taking itself too seriously, especially within the action, but at the same time, there is like human emotion to it, and you just buy into it, especially when you meet like the two friends who have their trials and tribulations they have to go through throughout the movie. 3 hours, and you do kind of feel the runtime after a bit because in like the second hour, it becomes a very serious part of the movie, but it still works for me. It still is a lot of fun. So I
Yeah.
really want people to go out and see it. And that was just a quick review. Well, not really a review, but I just wanted to let people know about it. Go watch it
Look,
on Netflix.
reviews on the channel are going to stay the same, but I have done a lot of filming and work with Kyle today, so I don't want to review Men after this, but the movie Men was awesome. I'm just going to say it here, and I'll clip this out, but Men was awesome. I love Alex Garland and his weirdness.
Oh
He has
yeah.
made nothing but weird movies. I get this movie. I mean, I remember thinking Ex Machina is an underrated movie people should see. I think the show Devs
Yes.
is a movie that I think people who like
Annihilation is
more
Annihilation is
yeah.
also underrated.
I saw a list on Collider of his top movies, and they didn't have Annihilation on the list. They had
Wow,
his
really?
movies ranked best to worst, and they didn't have Annihilation even on the list. And I was like, how?
He
I
did
get why
Annihilation,
some
right?
people think Men. Yes, he did. I get why
Okay.
people think
Yeah.
Men might be his worst. It is by far the weirdest and the creepiest, and like the title, it blames men for a lot of things, and I think rightfully so. But I had a blast in that movie. I mean, it ended, and my buddy I see it with, when we got out of Doctor Strange, he was like, "That movie was so weird." And then we decided we were going to go on a side quest to find the weirdest movie ever. We were talking about like movies like Rubber, about our sentient tire who can blow people's heads off. And
Yeah.
we talked about Malignant, which is a weird movie but fun. And we were like, this is weird, but we really liked it. It got you thinking. The movie ended and we were thinking about it a lot. The score, Kyle, you've talked a lot on our channel about shadows and how shadows are used. This might
Mm.
have been the best shadows I've ever seen used. There
Oh,
were
thank
some
God.
shots that were incredible in terms of its blacks to its lights, and I
Yes.
was here for it. So that's my quick review, and I'll clip that out, and I'll clip Kyle's little RRR out as well. But reviews for the most part are going to be on the main channel
Yeah.
still, on time, but I'm not up to it. So I think this is a good spot to end episode 1. Would you have a little fun on this podcast, Kyle, or what?
Yeah, I did, man. I felt like we weren't stuck with, our short times that we tried to do for our reviews, and we just got to, just have a good time. Hope
I thought it
everyone
was
kicked back with
average
a nice
best.
drink. I got my water. And yeah, it's fun. This
I
was a good
need
time.
It was not good. We need way more Star Wars talk than this. Get your Bollywood movies out of here. We got Star Wars to talk
All
about.
right. All
I'm
right.
just
Never
kidding. Might have to
again.
check it out. Put it on the list. I put it on the list. Guys,
Good.
comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thank you to the Moon Meal patrons. Thank you for being part of the Patreon. Remember, this is Patreon exclusive. And as always, thank you for watching, Mom.
See you guys.